Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now this is Mafia Definitive Edition, or the Mafia Remake as some are calling it. This modern overhaul of 2002's original release looks fantastic and gives me a healthy hit of nostalgia at the same time. That being said, it's fair to say that it requires far beefier system requirements to run smoothly on PC than the original, but that's a given, and we're a mile away from the days when an Athlon 64 and 2600 XT could make light work of your video game collection. But even owning a modern system doesn't guarantee you a decent frame rate, and if you're working with a tighter budget for your next PC build or have a super entry level system already, then you might be wondering just how well new releases will run on it. And that's what I want to answer with Mafia today. In this one we're using our good old Athlon 3000G along with its integrated graphics and hoping to get playable frame rates in Mafia Definitive Edition. This APU combines a dual-core, 4-threaded processor with onboard Vega 3 graphics and sometimes costs less than the games it's able to run. Madness. So a quick word on the setup. I'm using the Athlon at stock speeds, but the onboard GPU is overclocked from 1100 MHz to 1650. This can be done by changing the GFX clock frequency in the BIOS as well as the iGPU voltage, in this case to 1.2. This increase should help out in games and can be done on the stock cooler. However, I'd recommend something a little beefier, perhaps like a Ryzen cooler, if you plan to keep it like this. So jumping into Mafia here, and I had to set everything to low with 720p resolution, the lowest resolution available in the game. I should also clarify that this is the Steam version. I was expecting a slideshow, to be honest, but it did immediately better than I thought, and let's play through it for a little bit and discuss the performance and graphics as we go. So I started off here in free ride mode. This is the mode that I tested because it lets us explore the city at our own pace. Now free ride is unlocked after playing through the first mission. You can quit after you've completed the first mission to the main menu, and then free ride should be available. Now I was looking around here for a car to steal. I did spot one in a minute, but it wasn't quite roadworthy, as you'll see. Yeah, here it is in this alley. I mean, I'm no mechanic, but yeah, I can tell that this isn't really ideal. So I carried on running around here. The frame rate was hovering between 20 and 30, which honestly is quite good. As we made our way to the more open-ended part of town here, the frame rate did increase to about 23 or 24, but it is going to be far from a smooth and flawless experience. Now this time round I took my taxi out to the countryside. I started off in this busier part of town here. As you can see, there are more cars on the road. The frame rate is still hovering at about 20 to 25 FPS most of the time. Rarely will it touch 30 FPS, but the overclocked Vega 3 iGPU is probably helping out here, and it's still the limiting factor, however, when it comes to comparing the CPU with the onboard integrated graphics. As you can see now, I got myself onto this road and started making my way to the countryside, but what you'll notice is that the frame rate doesn't really change. It doesn't really matter too much where you are on the map, but I mean the Vega 3 iGPU is holding our processor back in a lot of cases, so you're not really going to see many improvements as far as that frame rate is concerned. Here we are then, in the middle of, well, nowhere pretty much, and we're hovering at around 24 to 25 FPS. It's far from an unplayable experience. It's doing much better than I thought, to be honest. I mean, at least 20 FPS on nothing but a 30 or 40 pounds APU really is quite impressive with a brand new game, but yeah, it is far from ideal if you're used to 30 or even 60 FPS. I wouldn't expect 60, of course, from something like this. Okay, so what I did next was actually add the GTX 1050 Ti to the system. I kept the processor at stock speeds. We still had 16 gigs of dual channel 3000 MHz RAM in this PC, and adding the 1050 Ti allowed us to use 1080p resolution with medium settings. This is pretty much as high as I could turn things up without dropping below 30 FPS too much of the time. I mean, there were still certainly some drops. You'll notice that the frame rate does drop into the high 20s, and the processor is now the limiting factor. But that being said, the 1050 Ti is still maxing out as well. The memory usage is sitting at just under 7 gigs and the VRAM usage is sitting just under 3. The game still looks really nice at these settings, medium at 1080p, and if you're happy with 30 FPS then you could probably make do with these settings and enable VSync. I think to achieve 60 on a similar setup you're probably going to want a lower resolution or the low settings. However, I don't think they will guarantee you 60 FPS either. The game does look really good at medium though, as you can see here. We're just driving through another busier part of town. This is the work sector, I believe it's called, and it looks pretty decent in my opinion. Mafia Remastered, then Mafia Definitive Edition, whatever you want to call it, will run better than I expected on the Athlon 3000G on its own, but that may not be considered playable by most people. 20 to 25 FPS is certainly better than the PowerPoint presentation I was initially expecting, but you're probably going to want to add a graphics card to that, even if it is just something like a 1050 Ti for those extra frames. So, for this last part, I'd actually like to give my opinion on the game itself. It's currently £35 on Steam here in the UK, and a few people have asked me if I think it's worth it, even before I had a chance to answer. Let's just appreciate the losing the police here. Look at that action sequence, very nice. Now, back to business. I think Mafia is a pretty good game. I don't think that people coming into this expecting a really vibrant and active open world during the free ride segment will appreciate it that much. This is very much sort of a linear driven game, you know, you're playing it for the story, pretty much. It's just like how it used to be. You play it on a mission by mission basis. The free ride mode is completely separate, and during that free ride option there isn't really that much to do, but it is nice to take a look at the city, see how things have changed in near 20 years. If you haven't played this title before, I think you'll enjoy it. There are some pretty iconic missions. If you've ever heard about the Mafia racing mission that people often discuss and talk about, well, playing it will give you nightmares just like it did 20 years ago. I was too young to play it when it came out, but I think I played through it about 5 or 10 years ago now, and I really did enjoy the original version, and from what I've played so far, I'm a couple of missions in, I'm really enjoying this as well. It looks great, it plays pretty nicely, and I think, you know, you'll really enjoy it. If you're debating whether or not to pick it up, I think you should, but you know, it's down to individual preference. I'm having a great time, and yeah, it runs okay. But if you're using slightly lower end hardware, then just be aware that it may struggle to run. Look up some performance reviews on YouTube before purchasing, and you should be good to go. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like on it down below. Leave a dislike if you didn't. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.